Your Royal Highness, Princess Nelisirik Tapu Fortfili Carnival, the Honorable Garcia Natano, Deputy Prime Minister of Tuvalu, the former President of Kiribati, Honorable Iromia Tapai, Reverend Dr. Siatami Javier, Principal of Siadotai Theological College, Secretaries to Cabinet, Public Service Commissions, and senior public servants from the fellow Pacific small island states, Japanese Ambassador, His Excellency Yasuo Takase, and members of the Diplomatic Corps, senior officials from the Commonwealth Secretariat and Secretariat for the Pacific Community, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for the government of the Kingdom of Tonga to host the Commonwealth Small Island States Governance and Development meetings, and a privilege for me to deliver the opening remarks. I'm pleased that the meeting is held here during the second year since Tonga's historic political reform, which ushered in our first democratic government. The reforms were led by His late Majesty King George V, whom we continue to mourn. Those who were last here in 2010 will note that the People's Representative in the Legislative Assembly now outnumber Nobles Representative by 17 to 9, and theoretically can form government to run this country. The Legislative Assembly now elects the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the House instead of the monarch. Ministers are appointed by the monarch on the advice of the Prime Minister and serve for a term of 4 years. The judiciary has been posted by a Lord Chancellor to oversee it, and the importance of the rule of law reiterated by an independent Attorney General. I shall not labor you with the finer details of our political reform aimed at better governance, but suffice to say it is a work in progress. There are issues we were prepared for and some we were not. In some instances, we find ourselves in uncharted waters, all of which makes it very exciting times. In the last year and a half, this government has pursued several initiatives. The foremost has been trying to get the economy back on track under the Tonga Strategic Development Framework. To achieve this, we have undertaken the structural reform of government ministries. By 1st of July 2012, we will have 14 ministries to complement the 12 ministers. Several governments have tried and failed to reform government ministries, and I'm very confident we will succeed. Structural reform of government is an ongoing process that takes time. The real challenge is simply not changing the number of ministries, for that would be pouring old wine into new bottles, but the change in mindset by public servants to truly serve the public, to be more responsive and efficient in the way it does business. This government is fully committed to this process, and I'm pleased that this meeting contributes to it. A professional, independent, and a political public service is fundamental to the development of any country. Elected government may come and go, but it is the public service that remains constant, guided by the laws and policies passed by politicians and formulated and implemented by governments respectively. The reality in the Pacific small island states is that the public service is the largest employer. To balance this government has made a conscious effort, indeed reflected in this year's budget, to promote the private sector, not only in the traditional primary and tourism sectors, but by looking for new opportunities in energy, communications, and infrastructures. In 2008, the Commonwealth Secretariat assisted us in developing a national ICT policy and strategic plan. A direct result of this is the submarine fiber optic cable that we will have access to this time next year. Apart from the technical and commercial advantages, it will further facilitate the flow and exchange of information. Another important outcome is the freedom of information policy that will be implemented shortly. This will contribute to this government's efforts to be as transparent and accountable as possible. The Tonga Strategic Development Framework is our 4-year strategic plan. One of the 8 objectives is our desire to have better governance by adopting the principles of good governance, accountability, transparency, anti-corruption, and the rule of law. There are also other governance issues that this government has implemented thus far, such as Cabinet Manual that to guide the work of Cabinet and freely available to the public. The release of Cabinet decisions policy, the approval that an anti-corruption commissioner be appointed, and only last week Cabinet approved a legal aid bill. I am pleased that traditional governance has taken a central place in this week's program. I'm delighted that Her Royal Highness Princess Siliktapu gracefully accepted to speak on this subject from a Tonga traditional governance perspective. I'm also pleased to see that the resource team and presenters are all very eminent and experienced regional persons. Development partners need to utilize our regional experts, where previously outsiders have failed to make a sustainable difference. I'm aware that the Commonwealth brought together secretaries to Cabinet and public service CEOs in 2009 and again in 2011. I acknowledge the Commonwealth Secretariat for starting dialogues on these broad issues of good governance in the region, including the commitment to provide support through the governance facilities based in Honiara, a welcome CEO induction program for Tonga on good governance and effective public service management in 2009, and a series of strategic consultations at Cabinet Secretary and CEO level over the last 5 years. The outcome of these meetings clearly identified the need to strengthen the interface between elected ministers and cabinets and chief executive officers and their roles in the whole of government machineries. Mindful of these meetings, it is now time to see real concrete outcomes, and I hope that this conference will guide the Commonwealth strategy and help to clearly articulate appropriate and practical programs of assistance for the region in this critical area of development in our region. In small island states, our only assets and sustainable resources is our people. Governments invest in the people, and capacity building remains key and fundamental to small island states' development. Political and public sector governance frameworks will continue to evolve and mature over time, and we need to empower people and leaders to deliver political stability, economic growth, and development for our island government and region. Although your stay with us is short, I hope you have a chance to sample a little of what our island kingdom has to offer. And when you return, I wish you a safe journey. It is my pleasure and honor to declare the regional preparatory consultation on governance and development in Commonwealth Small Island States of the Pacific open. Malo apito, and thank you very much.